Welcome back, everyone. I am Cas Piancey. I'm joined, as usual, by my partner in crime, Mr. Bennett Tomlin. How are you today?
I'm making do. How are you, Cass?
Whatever. But we are joined by a very special guest, Nitish Pahwa from Slate, a journalist covering business, tech over at Slate. We're having you on today, very special guest. How are you, first of all?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Big fan of the podcast, as you know.
Well, it's been an exciting time to still be covering this. We're going to get into a lot of stuff today, but I think you wanted to start off today talking about the kind of misconception that a lot of cryptocurrency lobbyists, executives, venture capitalists have put forward as to there being this huge swath of crypto voters, um, that they themselves are responsible for the Democrats losing. And then the now Federal Reserve report coming out kind of pushing forward the idea that that is a bunch of baloney. But yeah, can you explain both sides of this argument?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was interesting. I covered the SBF trial for Slate. Going down to Southern District, New York. Miss you all there. Hope you all are good. Um, and when after that was over, like a lot of my colleagues, I remember kind of had the impression that that was like over for crypto as well, like just as a whole, right? And I think, to be fair, that was a generally widely shared perception, even after like the crypto winter of 2022, which of course was very Sam Bankman-Fried fueled. But what was interesting was to see as the election season was ramping up when Joe Biden was still in the race. Remember that guy? There was this just like huge fundraising effort from a lot of big folks still in the crypto space. So like Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, most infamously and most prominently, but also executives from places like Ripple, from Solana, from other places that I think notably had brushed up against the Biden administration and Gary Gensler in some regulatory and legal conflicts. So they like established all these PACs, these organizations, and just these other like entities for taking and spending money on a bunch of like very closely targeted political races. Like I think their first really big victory was when they spent a ton in the Democrats' California Senate primary, and because then Representative Katie Porter, who was running, had a lot to say about crypto, much of it negative. They spent a lot on attack ads against her, and I mean, Adam Schiff won out. He is California senator now, for better or worse. Also, notably, voting for crypto legislation, but we'll get to that in a bit. Fresh off of, victories like that, which, like, there's only, I think, so much you can attribute to them in terms of, like, the actual victory. Like, in that race in particular, Schiff had been polling already quite high, even before the attack ads were railing in.
Yes.
And in fact, his own campaign had infamously, my colleague Alex Salmon covered this for us, but was boosting his Republican opponent in the primary. It's California, nonpartisan primary, so that it could be an easy win and runoff come November.
Yeah.
So you, it's unclear, how much this money actually contributed, but nevertheless, it's obviously something you can just point to and then go from there, right? And then these PACs, they're raising even more money from a ton of like individual crypto company employees and executives. They're like putting out this polling saying like there are all these people in swing states who are really concerned about crypto. They think every day about Gary Gensler, who haunts them in their nightmares and is like ruining their financial freedom. And it became such a pitched like course from these people specifically that like I think a lot of lawmakers and like candidates were spooked into thinking that, yeah, oh my God, wait, the crypto thing is still going on. And I mean, the stink of the Sam Bankman-Fried campaign donations hadn't even really waned off yet until this money started pouring in. And I mean, and I think they were scared not least because, again, very strategically, these PACs were targeting very close and key races. There was the Ohio Senate race. There was the Montana Senate race. There were all these things that were going to be key for both the Republicans and Democrats. And I mean, we all know what happened in November. It was, there were quite a few Republican victories up and down the ticket. And in cases where there were Democratic victories, like Alyssa Slotkin in her close race in Michigan, she had also received quite a bit of crypto PAC money. And now we're in a place where the president has a meme coin and a crypto interest and God knows what else right now, like the Truth Social crypto arm.
Right.
We have the AI and crypto advisors. We have like Brian Armstrong and all these guys just like dining out at the White House, and Mark Andreessen advising appointments. And it's weird. It's a really weird time. And the thing is, people are thinking, thanks to these like really mocked up polls and, all this other like electoral victory, they're like, okay, but are people like using crypto now? Is it back after all these years of scamming? And it's really not. And there are a few signs you could point to there, but I'll stop talking. That's just my judgment.
No, so for me, one of the things you brought up here, it just struck a nerve for me because I had recently gotten into an argument with Mark Cuban on Blue Sky. And multiple people basically got into my DMs to tell me that his take was identical to the take that venture capitalists and lobbyists for the cryptocurrency, industry, had pitched this like as a bullshit propaganda concept in 2023 or 2022. Like they had long ago figured out how they were going to attack politicians and push this idea onto influential donors, I guess is what I'll call someone like Mark Cuban. And that Mark Cuban had completely fallen for it, right? That Mark Cuban, here he was talking about these crypto voters. If we had just convinced these 200,000 young white men to vote differently, everything would be different right now. And I think me, Nathan Tankus, other people jumped in to be like, Mark, it's the money, right? And I think that's what you're talking about right now is that we can, I agree that crypto deeply influenced the election. And I do think that these people got Trump, they helped get Trump elected. But it's not because there's this huge swath of people from the people stuck in poverty to the wealthy white people in the suburbs. Like, no, that is not who cared about crypto. It was a few executives and their hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's just infuriating to invent an entire class of people that does not exist.
Right. And I think one very key telltale sign as to that fact was that one of the key PACs in question, which is called Fair Shake, a lot of the ads they bankrolled did not talk about crypto at all. They were targeted in all these swing districts, states. They were just blanketed. Did not talk about crypto even once. They were just like going off the normal like campaign issues that really were there in inflation, the economy, immigration, et cetera, et cetera. You would think that you'd be finally honing this pitch to these supposedly like essential swing voters, like by speaking their language straight up.
And part of like this whole thing, what makes this whole thing interesting to me was kind of Sam Bankman-Fried was in some senses disruptive to like the existing political structures that the crypto industry was already building in 2022. When Sam Bankman-Fried decided to get involved in politics, he went through like his mother, Mind the Gap, and that kind of thing, instead of heavily interfacing with a lot of the existing crypto lobbying, advisory, and other organizations like that. And then he came in and he donated money to 1 out of every 3 members of Congress, or whatever crazy number it was, and just like blanketed it and blew it up. And then more than that, he specifically used that huge amount of money that he invested basically out of nowhere. Like 2020, he was just focused mostly just focused on the presidential. And then by 2022, like shortly before he goes bankrupt, he's giving to 1 out of 3 of the people in Congress. And so like the speed at which he scaled that up meant he was like already outside of the existing structures. And then from outside those structures, he advanced things like the Digital Commodity Consumer Protection Act, which was not super popular among a lot of the cryptocurrency industry because it would have effectively prevented a lot of existing DeFi. So any like DeFi or what we would now call Web3 or things like that companies were not in favor of a lot of the legislation and stuff that Sam Bankman-Fried was using his dollars to invest. And even some who could kind of, like part of the thing with the Digital Commodity Consumer Protection Act is it was really centralizing. You had to basically go through these centralized actors if you wanted to use these things. And even despite that, some people like Coinbase were not super enthused about the way this bill was being advanced. And so when Sam Bankman-Fried disappeared because of his criminality, it gave the industry the opportunity to use all the money they still had, because anyone who didn't have money on FTX still did have some money. And then they said, well, everyone's been compromised, might as well keep the compromise going. And we're then started pushing for bills like Fit 21, which, unlike DCCPA, was designed in a way to try to exempt a larger amount of the cryptocurrency industry from regulation, rather than trying to make it like if you want to access crypto, you have to go through one of these centralized intermediaries. And so like they were able to very quickly re-engage in that way.
Mm-hmm.
The other part that's kind of interesting to me here is like, I thought there was an opportunity that crypto might effectively die in the United States. But I think for that to have happened, the like Democrats would have probably needed to win the House and the presidency and then like make it part of an anti-corruption like pitch or package where they're going after crypto to try to distance themselves from Sam Bankman-Fried and separate themselves out as like some kind of anti-corruption thing. And that didn't happen. And the pro-corruption forces did win. And so like that to me kind of like also having Donald Trump available when he is so receptive to pitches that come from people with money is very useful for people with a lot of money, and that's the cryptocurrency executives.
Did you guys see that clip from the All In podcast where Chamath, famous
we played
coin
it, yeah.
and Solana bull, was talking about how he could never get anyone on the line at the Biden White House, but under
Yes.
Trump now, he can talk to anybody.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and saying it completely disassociated from the idea that like, do you see the problem here? Do you see the problem here, dude? Do you understand how this could be an issue? Because like, I can't get the president's ear.
Never once had a president listen to me.
Yeah.
So, like,
says Cass.
well, it's just ironic to me that mega ultra wealthy guy is like, I gave him a bunch of money and now he's listening to me and I love that. And I'm just like, okay, that's called it's called a kleptocracy. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine, but you should understand what you're endorsing, which is just a kleptocracy. You don't care about democracy. You don't care about the issues. It's more of the invented crypto voter. The all important part of this for me is like, and what jobs is this bringing to the mainland? Like, what are we fighting for right now? What exactly are these like, what does Fair Shake want? What is it that they need that is going to benefit every American? Access to the slot machine? I don't think that that's benefiting most Americans, right? So it's like, what on principle, what are you fighting for? And I think you kind of drive a really meaningful point where it's like, nothing.
And I think that also kind of is like a response to Mark Cuban's entire argument is like, what policy-wise did you actually want to be different? And how much of that was just enabling a bunch of these people who you say are disadvantaged, who you say are at this like problematic position where they are depositing their entire paychecks to Robinhood and putting their entire $20 net worth into Dogecoin or whatever, which was like a hypothetical Mark Cuban had. Like, is it good that person with a $20 net worth can go and put it all on Dogecoin after depositing their entire paycheck? Right. Is that socially beneficial? Do we want to have a system in which that is the basis that we need, that
right.
That's the person you want to appeal to by making it as easy as possible to get to that slot machine? Like, fundamentally, the crypto industry was never going to accept any kind of regulation, and they worked very effectively at like After Sam Bankman-Fried set the standard of spending, so many of the other executives realized they needed to open their wallets, donate to the PACs, and create like a similar sized war chest so that they could continue that type of donation.
I have an important question though. Like, do you think, having seen the numbers go up, not in terms of users, the numbers go up in terms of value, and a president that is incredibly focused on this stuff. It seems like instead of like 100 deals in 100 days, he's putting out a crypto wallet. Like we're doing NFTs, we're doing meme coin. You went over it at the beginning. There's a bunch of stuff crypto related that he's constantly pushing. We have an AI and crypto czar with David Sachs. Like crypto is taking a front and center import for a bunch of these people. And I'm just curious what you think that means for the future of crypto, but also for the future of politics, for the future of your beat that you're covering. What do you think?
Well, the future of my beat, I mean, there's definitely no shortage of stories every single day, I'll tell you what. But I mean, same for you guys too. I mean, I remember, Cas, when I reached out to you guys about a piece I wrote, like, oh yeah, where does crypto media go now after this crypto winter? And guess what? Still around. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, the value thing is very interesting to me. I think there are a few things to keep in mind here, because that's one instance where you can just like look at these numbers and be like, oh yeah, number go up, everything is looking peachy. Bitcoin is finally at 6 digits. Congrats to all pizza buyers everywhere. And you mentioned this point, Bennett, which is that the Bitcoin trading volumes, the actual numbers there, are pretty down from where they were even just last year or like a few years before that.
Trading volumes are still decent. Transaction volumes are pretty low.
Transaction volumes, sorry about that. Yeah, big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big difference insofar as like, you're right that I guess for years now, that's what they've all admitted, that it's basically just speculation and trading. But like, right, as Bennett is pointing out, if the transactions aren't occurring, it means it's not being used actually. And it isn't important. It's only important insofar as like people aren't using it for what it's designed for, if it's actually designed for anything outside of speculation.
Right. 100%. Like, and in a way, you can see this as a crypto kind of like in its own like self-perpetuating vibes feedback loop. It's like, all of the last year, it's like, okay, we're seeing political organizing. We're seeing people make these very public statements. We're now seeing politicians flock to this thing. For any other product or sector, obviously that's going to lead to a stock price increase, right? Whether or not that's actually warranted down the line. Just general bullishness encourages investor bullishness. But if you look at the Federal Reserve's report that just came out very recently, I want to give a shout out to Molly White, who's been very good at both debunking these organizers' polling methodologies and their usership numbers.
I legit thought
are you saying sending a push notification to Coinbase users is a bad way to get a judge of the overall nation's use of crypto?
Look, I'm not a pollster, but I'm not an expert. But
I thought you were going to say, I want to give a shout out to Jerome Powell, and I was like, oh wow, this is going in a weird direction, but cool.
I will say, big shout out to our boy. I hope he can survive up there, because
oh, no chance.
Yeah,
his days are numbered for sure.
Yeah, he's kind of our last hope. But yeah, as the Federal Reserve for now still remains an independent institution. God knows what'll happen when that's no longer the case. They've come out with a report showing that ever since 2021, which is when they started tracking cryptocurrency like usership, ownership numbers, it's gone down. It's gone down every single year. And even at its peak in 2021, which, was actually a time when late night hosts were hawking the stuff, there was, at least like a very well documented boom in NFTs from like art world folks and just general interest in some of these other alternative currencies, which, whatever you make of it, there was a certain surge. But if you look at the actual numbers for any use of cryptocurrency since 2021, it goes from 12% all the way down to 8% as of 2024. I mean, you guys tell me. I'm not a mathematician. Does that seem like a lot of Americans are suddenly very enthusiastic about this stuff
It
again?
doesn't. It doesn't. But I do want to say that part of my questioning here, though, is that, like, so we've seen this decrease in numbers, but as you've pointed out, it's not like, I mean, Democrats are now just in the fold, right? Like, there is no opposition. There is no opposition to crypto anymore.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
Bennett, if you want to push back on that.
I mean, it's Elizabeth Warren. Shout out to her. But yeah.
I mean, Dianne Feinstein blew up the one vote for to hold the bipartisan hearing or whatever. Like, there's not no resistance. Gillibrand seems confused about what the bill she supposedly co-sponsored contains, but that's Gillibrand, Like, it's not that there's like, if there was really no opposition, both the Genius Act and the Fit 21 derivative that they're trying to get through as the Market Structure Act would have already passed and been signed, right? Like, clearly there is some amount of legislative difficulty in getting to 60 votes on those,
That is a fair point. That is an extremely fair point. And I think you can probably attribute that to the fact that there have been, like, local regulations and problems even in, like, red states where, like, supposedly, they're supposed to be all super pro Bitcoin, pro crypto, but there's that great, very sad and worrying piece that Time magazine wrote, Andrew Chow, friend of mine from the crypto, from the SBF trial, wrote, where he talked to, like, these residents of a small town where a Bitcoin farm was set up, and they're all like, hey, our health has not been great since this thing came to town. It's very noisy. We're getting extremely nauseous. And we are also definitely not seeing any of the supposed, like, riches benefits from having this thing here. Added to that, not too long ago, the state of Arkansas, which has otherwise been, pretty pro-crypto generally, they passed their own, like, environmental regulations on crypto. I mean, they weren't, like, super extensive. I don't want to make it seem like they've all of a sudden started caring about climate change, but, like, they have, like, their own, like, reservations about, like, okay, where should these things be built? How often should these operating systems be humming? And it's also coming at a time when there's a lot of competition for use space from AI exclusive data centers, right? And I mean, you can put together the job titles all you want. David Sachs can be both AI and crypto, but the issue there is the fact that these AI training processes, data sets are going to require their own, like, huge data center complexes, and they're not going to exactly play super well with the crypto towers that are coming to town. But to go back to an earlier question you were saying, Cass, which is, like, what are the benefits here? What are people fighting for? I mean, like, they don't want these big ass, like, computer systems coming to their backyard. They want housing.
Well, and I think it's funny that you reference, like, that the AI data centers aren't good for the crypto people, because so many of the, like, Bitcoin mining firms that had, like, secured power contracts or had started construction on data centers but hadn't, like, actually gotten their ant miners to shove in there yet have started trying to convert their data centers over to AI data centers because they think their margin is better running an AI data center than trying to mine Bitcoin, which it is, because mining Bitcoin is an awful business with awful margins that you could not convince me to get involved in. But that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
I'm not Eric Trump. I don't need to try to make the numbers work.
He doesn't need to make the numbers work either, to be fair. But
yeah, I mean, I guess when Hut 8 just gives you their machines for it or whatever, you can do whatever you want.
And Daddy's president. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we don't see the jobs. We don't see these things actually embedded in the communities. And what's kind of interesting to me and what's been kind of hard for me to judge is we've seen this fall from 12% to 8%. And I expect that kind of between cycles for crypto. Cass and I have been around for a couple cycles now. And generally you see, like, the price starts to surge, then people come in, then the price goes down, and then people start to leave. But, like, the important part of that cycle has always been that the cryptocurrency community itself has been good at, like, converting the mass. They convert some small percentage of the mass they attract into, like, true believers. Yes, and
Mhm.
and they keep the true believers to stick around. Um, and what's been kind of strange is like, and this is probably like a confounding variable, is I feel like I see fewer true believers than I used to. And like the confounding variable I think here might be that Elon Musk broke Twitter, and like crypto Twitter was how I stayed connected to kind of like the true believers in the broader industry as a whole. But like there are a lot of dumb arguments from a lot of prominent people in crypto, and like a lot of people who've gone silent or whose only posts are about politics and stuff now. Like there has been some kind of vibe shift in crypto, and it feels like it's related to the fact that it feels as though this particular increase in price was driven by like a couple things conveniently coming together. Like they got the approval for the ETFs under the despotic rule of Gary Gensler. He allowed those ETFs to start trading, which opened up more liquidity and made a bunch of like TradFi people see a place to earn fees. And they love places to earn fees. That's like their favorite type of business. And it also then enabled a bunch of the like worst men on earth, cryptocurrency executives, to act out power fantasies that they've had for a long time. And like Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to do. Like Sam Bankman-Fried at some level felt like he believed his political donations bought him political access and political pull in a way that made him important enough that at times he pretended he might end up as president. And so like I think we're seeing from a lot of these like crypto executives now, they're doing the same thing. They want to be the leaders.
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent point, and that's how they've like wriggled themselves into these positions. I mean, like David Sachs has not been confirmed by the Senate. Like
Sure.
he's just kind of up there, and he's just kind of hobnobbing with all these senators anyway.
Same with Bo Hines, who's way more important than David Sachs is.
And yeah, the Bo Hines thing is just so funny because it's so clearly just a reward for him having lost 2 congressional campaigns, but loving Trump throughout all of them, and not even talking that much about crypto in those campaigns.
Yeah.
It was crazy when his name was announced because like I got a ping in the company Slack and someone was like, "What, Bennett, what do you know about this person?" And I'm like, "I don't know who that person is. I've never heard that name before. They're associated with no companies I've ever heard of. I don't know what to tell you. They're a guy. They're a dude."
Right.
I mean, hey, for all we know, I've never seen him in real life. He could be like an AI generated like avatar, let loose from meta servers. I haven't seen him. Just saying.
I don't think AI servers get as many concussions as Bo Hines has had.
Fair enough. That's another thing they're going to take away from us, the ability to get concussions.
The point I'm trying to drive home here is that I'm in almost like a state of shock at this point because I don't know for the future, I guess mostly for America, but for the world at large too. But I am concerned that it seems like there's been complete political capture and regulatory capture by the crypto industry, which in and of itself is so small and run by basically like 16 people who are billionaires control the industry, and now they're pushing through whatever they want. And I'm curious, like, what happened? Why would this stop now? Like, is this hell? Are we in hell? Or is there a path out of this crazy capture that we're seeing?
That's a great question. And so one thing when I started theorizing about, this like sudden surge in like a crypto political playership last year was I kind of thought of it as like this very convenient marriage between a lot of just like general, government skeptical tech types who like for some reason, Joe Biden and Gary Gensler like drove them like completely batshit. Same with Mark Cuban, also famous Gary Gensler hater, but I digress. And like, because you guys remember all those manifestos Mark Andreessen started coming out with, late 2023, early
time to build.
Yeah, exactly. It's time to build. It's the techno-optimist agenda. We need to we cannot stop now, otherwise like billions of future children who will like inhabit Mars and like a glorious peace will die or something. That was kind of the gist I got from it. But like, because both, obviously A16Z very invested, steeped in both crypto and AI. Just from a pure self-interest perspective, they want to make sure that both those things keep driving up. But the free market is not working for them. People are not buying in. New like startups are just not like IPOing or like reaching the same levels of success that they were maybe back when interest rates were like negative. They could just and more to the point, they viewed this as like, okay, we take these like AI bulls who maybe think like, oh, all that crypto stuff was a scam. This is like the real thing. Versus like the crypto folks who want to like keep their, GPUs for Bitcoin mining instead of AI. It's like, okay, guys, let's band up together here. Let's take out these freedom-hating libs, and then we'll figure out where to go from here. And I mean, it worked for them, but I think you're already starting to see so many of the cracks in that pretty fragile coalition starting to pop up, right? Like when Trump started announcing like his currency reserves, obviously the like Bitcoin hardliners versus the general cryptocurrency enthusiast types were like very upset. They were like, wait, how can you put in Bitcoin in a stash with all these other like shit coins? There were a lot of folks who were mad that Trump launched his own meme coin. They were like, this degrades the purpose of this thing altogether. And you now, again, also just have this complete conflict between legislative priorities, right? I mean, I think you guys both made a good point here, which is that, yeah, there is still probably some like stickler, sentiment within Congress. The fact that, we have not already had like this big, bounty of both pro AI and pro crypto legislation pass. I mean, infamously in the budget bill, there's this that the House passed. There's this segment where they're talking about preempting all state level AI regulations. And I don't know if you guys saw, but Marjorie Taylor Greene came out today and said that she was shocked. She never would have voted for this. It's a violation of states' rights. And like,
well, you should
I mean,
read
wherever
the bill.
that comes from, like,
you know, read
she's
the bill
not
you're
someone I usually tend to take at her word, but her still expressing that public sentiment when she otherwise like is just there to do whatever Trump wants is like a little interesting to me.
See, I take her at her word. I bet she has no idea what's in that bill.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Thing's 1,000 pages long. I don't even know what's on that bill, man.
Yeah, but they have like teams of advisors telling them exactly, or you would hope they would. Whatever,
Right.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, I guess that's true. I guess I feel a little deflated on that front just because I've watched free market libertarians suddenly switch and be like, yeah, but Trump's pro crypto. And you're just like, wait, so you're cool with fascism now? Like, that doesn't make any sense, man. You can't be a free market libertarian and then be down with fascism. Like, of course, scratch a libertarian, get a fascist. But I like,
right.
It makes me feel like the easiest way to silence opposition actually is to give the loudest voices money.
And I think this is also a little bit downstream of the Latin American political effect here, right? Like we've had years now of Bukele in El Salvador and Milei in Argentina. They like love those guys because they do crack down also on protesters and lock up people in very awful gulags. And I think they've just gotten used to that because at the very least it's from a self-interest perspective, right? They can call up Bukele and be like, hey, buddy, can I stop over? And he'll say, yes, please bring your keys with you. And like, as long as they're not the ones who are in any danger, they feel fine with it. And it's dark. It's terrible.
Cass, getting kind of back to what you were saying before, like, is this it? Are we stuck here? Does it just keep getting worse? Like, one of the things I keep thinking about is, like, there is a chance that a pendulum pushed far enough will swing back, right? Is that Trump specifically embracing cryptocurrency as broadly as he has, and the cryptocurrency industry in turn embracing Trump instead of like rejecting or trying to distance themselves from him. There are chances where that ends up being unpopular enough at a future point that like going after crypto again has a bunch of political will behind it. However,
Yeah.
having said that, I thought that might happen after Sam Bankman-Fried. To get back to what we started this episode with, is I really thought there was going to be a moment like after November of 2022 where there was going to be like, I don't know, some kind of a bunch of new crypto regulatory actions, crypto enforcement actions, like some kind of investigation into like crypto more broadly coming out of Congress. But what instead we saw was they put Sam Bankman-Fried in prison and problem solved.
Right.
So there's a chance I think that it swings back the other way because Trump's made it too toxic. But there's also a chance that once Trump's gone, they'll go, problem solved.
I mean, I don't even think, I guess this is part of my frustration as well. Like, I know that we mostly cover crypto. I know that we mostly cover finance. But when the president goes, okay, yeah, I'm going to take a $400 million plane, and then after I'm done being president, I'm going to take it with me. And people just go, nah, all right. I'm just like, no, not all right. Like, this is not okay. We can't just wander past this story and be like, okay, gonna read the news, gonna keep reading the news, who cares, whatever. Like, no, that's not allowed. That's crazy that we're allowing it. We need it to stop. And so if that kind of corruption isn't making people pause and be like, this is bad, then I'm not sure there's any amount of corruption that hits that point. And because it's just so in your face that like crypto isn't that in your face generally, like unless it's Sam Bankman-Fried literally stealing money from people out of their bank account. Like generally it's just, like who's getting harmed by Trump coin? Nobody's fucking buying the thing, right? Except for people who want to bribe him. So nobody's really getting hurt.
Hey, there's some idiots who are buying it too. Don't forget about the idiots.
Not that many. And
Well,
I would suggest
these coastal elites looking down on the forgotten order.
Well, anyone who's stupid enough to buy the Trump coin is probably happy with their purchase, I guess. Like is basically what I'm saying. So I just don't. I don't see it, and that's why I'm asking you guys, because I'm like, maybe you have an idea that's better than me, or like a future outlook that is actually a little bit more optimistic, because it's all gone downhill so much faster than I ever expected it to be perfectly honest,
No, I think you're not wrong about that, and it is definitely troubling. What I will say, there have been, in the midst of like bad news, like every few hours these days, like there has been one thing that like has given me a little bit of hope, which is, I mean, not just the sheer backlash to Elon Musk, which has already led, Trump to like at least publicly distance himself, even though he's probably not functionally actually distancing himself that much. He still wants to give that appearance, which, as we all know, is pretty wounding to Elon's ego. But regarding the crypto and just like government stuff generally, the Pew Research Center, which is a source of actually reliable polls, unlike the crypto lobbies.
Aren't they woke communists? I thought they were woke communists.
Sorry, yeah. I'm pushing a woke agenda here. My mistake. But
The Marxists at Pew Global.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just a really funny concept.
Oh my god. But yeah, the DEI commies over at Pew actually have been doing a lot of really interesting polling coming out this year, which has shown that over the past decade, for one, like Americans have completely gone from this like post-Reagan era like consensus of government should try to like, back off our lives a little bit, to being pretty consistently in support of, no, actually the government should do more for us, the people, the taxpayers. And so, and when you look at also some of the polling that they've done around like how Americans feel about the cuts to federal departments, agencies, most people hate it. Like this one poll from late April showed like 55%, overall disapproving of the cuts, 44% approving, which is like, 44 might seem a little close, but that's still like a pretty big margin in between those sentiments. I mean, you also see all those videos where it's like, even, Chuck Grassley is getting mobbed by his own constituents who've been voting that like fossilized husk back into office for decades now and saying, yo, dude, what the hell? What are you doing here? I mean, I remember talking with someone about this recently. It's like, for the longest time, the consensus was like, yeah, you don't touch Social Security, right? You get the seniors, the retired seniors who vote, all very fired up, no matter what their other ideologies are, and they're not just touching the stove. They're like laying their bodies on the stove at this point. I mean, yeah. I mean, you saw that with Joni Ernst's little town hall the other day.
And afterwards as well, to mock people. Yeah. To mock people after you said, like, go die is just like, oh, wow, okay, you don't want your job, I guess. Like, you're going to lose your job, babe. I don't know what you're doing.
I live on the Iowa border, so I'm big fans of Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst.
Yeah. Like, I remember one thing that gave me a lot of hope even during the first Trump term was, so the parents the district my parents live in always been had been pretty red for decades. And, in 2018, like leading up to, this is right after like the big healthcare cuts, or the proposed healthcare cuts and like the protest to that fact. The longtime Republican representative was finally voted out. It was Alyssa Slotkin, but until this year it stayed blue. And this time it had finally been redrawn, and someone else not as well known had to come back in. But it's like, there are these things when like people do finally belatedly realize, and it sucks that it always happens this way, that no one knows what they've got till it's gone. But like
a different Joni there, a different Joni.
Yeah, exactly, a different Joni. Shout out to her. I hope she's doing okay, not paying attention to the news. It's a lot worse now, Joni. They do realize after the fact, like, okay, yeah, maybe having like a federal agency that protects our deposits from being commingled with random speculators is actually pretty good. That was
nice. On that note, and back to your question, Cass, like I think that's kind of the answer, right? Is like going back to the 1920s and 1930s, the Pecora Commission and the formation of the SEC was like the compromise moderate position with the financial industry, right? People were out for blood, and Congress agreed to do these like deep investigations and set up a regulatory body to keep the blood from happening, right? Like there are cases where there is enough political will, there is enough interest that like going after the thing is the like moderate consensus choice. It's just rare.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. There's two things I want to mention here. We had Corey Frayer on who used to work for the SEC. And he specifically had said to us that this now rings in my head like a horrifying bell all the time. But that it's much easier to deregulate than re-regulate. So once you start deregulating this stuff, the drive, the push, and the willpower to make it regulated again kind of evaporates for a long time. I think that's correct. But you brought up, the 30s and stuff, Bennett, and I think that's another great point, which is like, yeah, everything was bad. Like there was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of, it was the roaring 20s, but like politicians were horrifying and corruption was everywhere. And ultimately, we got FDR, arguably one of the greatest presidents of all time, out of it, and a ton of regulation and infrastructure projects that pushed America forward in a really good way. So in the deepest times of despair, you end up getting like some really great stuff out of it eventually. It took a very long time and a world war, but you eventually get some good stuff out of it. So
there's your answer.
Yeah,
all we need is a global depression, like 40% unemployment, and a world war, and things might get better.
World war, not a good idea this time, methinks, but yeah.
Plus, the Pecora Commission predated the World War by 10 years.
Right, no, but I just mean to get ourselves out of that mess. But yeah, I guess that's the most hopeful way to think about it, and it is something that I honestly wasn't reflecting on it. It's as sad as that sounds. I think there is some optimism about the idea of like, this won't last forever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I'm half joking, half somewhat serious about this, but I think once the Federal Reserve is finally ruled by our God King Ron Paul, and the dollar completely collapses as a world's reserve currency, we'll finally have room to rebuild. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're describing a possible outcome. I mean, it probably won't be Ron Paul. It'd be someone else. But like,
What? He's not old enough?
It's amazing that bro's out there still cooking.
Crazy.
Yeah.
90 years old and still passing some throwing out
cooking
some wild
deranged
conspiracies.
newsletters and videos
Yeah.
on a semi-regular basis for subscribers.
I'm
Just
sure
like
his son
the
is
most
helping him.
racist shit you've ever seen in your life. Yeah.
Did he become a hardcore I'm so glad I don't know.
Oh,
It
he's said a lot of racist things if you go over his archives.
I'm good. I don't need to know. It's fine. I don't need to like him. It is interesting, and we've had an End the Fed episode too, where I do think you're right that also that is a very real danger, and the dollar not being. I know a lot of other people just keep calling me crazy for being like, yeah, the dollar's fucked, but okay, like you don't have to believe me, and I'm not even suggesting there's anything any of us could do about it. I'm not like the dollar's fucked. Put your money in gold or some crazy shit.
Right.
I'm not Peter Schiff or whatever, but like I do think there's a real danger there, and I do think that it's not crazy to try to reflect on it and think about it. And you're right. If that does happen, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Like you lose the Fed and dollar reserve currency. Oof, we're in for some shit, boy. So
Anything's in play.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Good and bad. May you lead an interesting life, as the Chinese say.
I think the last thing is to probably note is that, I mean, we're already seeing like a bunch of like politicking for special elections, next year's midterms, and it'll be very interesting to see what the crypto lobby, how they act in those situations. But I would bet a decent bit of money that they are not going to be running on crypto. None of the politicians, none of the ads, none of the PACs, like, it's not going to, no matter how much they bray about it now, it's never going to have been the campaign issue that they made it out to be.
It's a good point. If anything, you're like, Trump is extra poisoning a poisoned well already.
Right.
It's a really interesting point to say that. He has done no favor, despite being politically and regulatorily open to crypto. He's really done the industry no favors, which is interesting. I don't know if they've considered that at all. They probably haven't. I think that they're more invested in short-term gains than long-term missions. So, that is a really interesting point and one I hadn't thought about. The well is deeply poisoned for crypto in America. That's true. On that note, buy Cascoin, guys. I keep telling everyone to buy Cascoin, and they're not listening to me.
I've already put all my treasuries and I've sold them off, put them into Cascoin.
Thank you. Finally.